What extinguishes the very essence of humanity within a person? What series of events, what confluence of circumstances can strip away empathy, compassion, and the fundamental understanding of right and wrong? What transforms a human being into something else? Is a monster born with inherent evil, a darkness woven into their very DNA? Or are they forged in the fires of relentless cruelty, shaped and molded by the harsh realities of a world that offers no solace? Is it nature or nurture that ultimately dictates the path a person will take? The disturbing and unsettling story of Carl Panzram forces us to confront this uncomfortable and deeply troubling question. His life challenges our preconceived notions about good and evil and compels us to examine the darkest corners of the human psyche. He chillingly and casually claimed responsibility for 21 murders, thousands upon thousands of unspeakable crimes, a litany of offenses that defy comprehension, and over 1,000 acts of brutal sexual violence, documented in stark detail with a chilling and almost detached indifference. His crimes were not impulsive acts of passion, but calculated and deliberate acts of cruelty. I have absolutely no desire to reform myself, not in the slightest. My only burning desire, my sole purpose, is to reform the people who try to reform me. And I believe the only truly effective way to reform people, to truly change them, is to kill them. These are not the desperate pleading words of a man seeking forgiveness or redemption, but the cold, calculated pronouncements of someone irrevocably shaped and scarred by a lifetime of unrelenting violence and profound betrayal. To even begin to understand Panzram, to attempt to unravel the enigma of his monstrous behavior, we must look past the shocking numbers and return to his desolate beginnings, a bleak and unforgiving world that offered him nothing but unrelenting pain, suffering, and despair. His life stands as a chilling testament to the devastating and corrupting power of systematic abuse and profound neglect, a shattered mirror reflecting back at us society's own hidden brutality, its failures to protect the most vulnerable among us. This is the tragic and disturbing story of a man who declared a brutal and unwavering war on all of humanity, a harrowing journey into the very depths of the abyss, a descent into unimaginable darkness. The late 19th century saw a massive wave of immigration to the United States, with families from all corners of Europe seeking a better life. Among these were Prussian immigrants, arriving in Minnesota with dreams of prosperity and a fresh start. Born into this world in 1891, to these hopeful Prussian immigrants in Minnesota, Carl Panzram's life, however, took a drastically different turn. His story is not one of the American dream realized, but a descent into darkness fueled by hardship and violence from a young age. The stability he might have known was shattered early on. His father, the family's anchor, abandoned them when Carl was just 8 years old, leaving a void that would never truly be filled. This act of desertion marked the beginning of a long and arduous journey for young Carl. His mother, now a single parent, was left with the daunting task of raising 6 children amidst the harsh realities of poverty. The family struggled to make ends meet, and the absence of a father figure created an environment ripe for instability. With no paternal guidance and a mother struggling to provide, Carl found himself adrift. He became unruly, acting out in ways that would ultimately lead him down a dark path. Petty theft and truancy became his norm, and it wasn't long before he had his first brush with the law, leading to his first arrest at the tender age of 11. The seeds of a troubled future were being sown. The authorities, believing they could correct his course, sentenced him to the Minnesota State Training School in Red Wing, a place meant to rehabilitate wayward youth. It was advertised as a reformative institution, a place where troubled boys could learn discipline, acquire skills, and ultimately become productive members of society. The brochures painted a picture of hope and transformation. But behind the facade of reform lay a grim reality, a nightmare of unchecked sadism and brutality. The school was far from a place of healing. It was a breeding ground for resentment and despair. Instead of guidance and compassion, Carl and the other boys were subjected to daily beatings, psychological torture, and horrific sexual abuse at the hands of those who were supposed to protect and nurture them. The very individuals entrusted with their care became their tormentors. This constant barrage of abuse shattered his already fragile worldview, leaving him with deep scars that would never fully heal. The trauma he endured warped his perception of the world and the people in it. In Carl's young mind, authority became inextricably linked with pain and suffering. The concept of mercy, of kindness, became a distant fantasy, a cruel joke in the face of his daily torment. After enduring this horrific environment for 2 long years, Panzram finally managed to escape the confines of Red Wing. But while he may have physically escaped the institution, the damage had already been irrevocably done. The young boy who had been sent away for the relatively minor offense of stealing apples, a boy who still possessed a flicker of innocence, returned to the world a fundamentally different person, a vessel overflowing with rage and resentment. The light within him had been extinguished, replaced by a burning desire for revenge. The world, as far as he could see, had shown him nothing but cruelty and injustice. And in response, he vowed to repay the world in kind, to inflict upon others the same pain and suffering he had endured. The very system that was designed to break him, to mold him into a compliant member of society, had instead inadvertently forged his hatred into a deadly weapon, a weapon he would wield with devastating consequences. He left Red Wing not reformed, not rehabilitated, but utterly transformed, ready and willing to inflict the unspeakable pain he had so intimately learned during his time within those walls. The institution had created a monster. Given the horrors he experienced, the systematic abuse he suffered, what else, tragically, could he have become? His fate, it seemed, was sealed by the very institution that claimed to offer salvation. After Red Wing, the institution that was supposed to rehabilitate him only managed to further scar him. Teenage Panzram was thrust into a world he barely understood, becoming a vagrant, adrift, and alone. He was cast out, unprepared for the harsh realities that awaited him. He found himself riding the rails across the vast expanse of the American West, a landscape as unforgiving as the people he encountered. The rhythmic clatter of the train became the soundtrack to his increasingly isolated existence. The hobo underworld was a brutal arena, a dog-eat-dog world where violence was the only currency that mattered. Survival wasn't about right or wrong. It meant inflicting pain before it was inflicted upon you. Every encounter was a test, every interaction a potential threat. Panzram, already conditioned by the systematic abuse he endured in institutions, adapted quickly to this savage environment. He learned to survive by fighting, stealing, and trusting absolutely no one. His heart hardened with each passing day, each act of self-preservation chipping away at any semblance of innocence. Every job he took, whether on the railroad, in a logging camp, or as a farm laborer, brought more exploitation and betrayal. Each experience reinforced his belief that the world was inherently cruel and unfair, that no one could be trusted, and that kindness was a weakness to be exploited. Each injustice fueled his already burning hatred for humanity. The world, in his eyes, became one giant prison, a place of confinement and suffering from which there was no escape. The bars weren't just physical, they were the invisible walls he built around his heart. His petty crimes escalated, fueled by rage and desperation, morphing from simple theft to armed robbery. This descent into criminality inevitably led to repeated arrests, each one further solidifying his path towards destruction. Prisons, rather than serving as a deterrent or a place of rehabilitation, were just more advanced courses in brutality. They refined his survival skills, deepened his contempt for authority, and solidified his belief that violence was the only language the world understood. The cycle of crime and punishment became his life's rhythm, a predictable and inescapable pattern of transgression and retribution. He was trapped in a loop, destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. The world had hurt him deeply, leaving scars that would never fully heal. In response, he sought to hurt the world in return, caught in a vicious feedback loop of violence and resentment. Every act of aggression was a desperate attempt to regain control, to lash out against the forces that had shaped him. He saw no escape from this cycle, no glimmer of hope for redemption, and no desire for change. His spirit was broken, his will to live extinguished. His purpose, twisted and distorted by years of abuse and neglect, crystallized into a single, unwavering objective: to wage war against society, to tear down the system that had failed him so completely. No longer just a victim of circumstance, he actively embraced the role of an agent of chaos, a force of destruction unleashed upon an unsuspecting world. He reveled in the fear and disruption he caused, finding a perverse sense of satisfaction in his acts of defiance. The broken boy, once a victim of the system, was now a man determined to break the system in return, one crime at a time. He vanished into the shadows, a phantom lurking in the darkness, forever seeking to settle the score. In the Oregon lumber camps, Panzram's rage found fertile ground. Among transient men and raw aggression, he felt liberated, free to unleash his darkest impulses. Around 1915, he claimed his first murders, robbing and killing fellow workers, disposing of bodies in the vast forests. His methods were brutal and simple: get victims drunk, bludgeon them, vanish into the wilderness. Each murder was an act of rebellion against a world he despised. The boy from Minnesota was gone. A predator had emerged. After his spree in the Northwest, Panzram took his war to sea, signing on as a sailor aboard the SS James G. Blaine. The ship became another institution to subvert. Officers were just more authority to despise. Panzram claimed to have assaulted 10 crewmen using violence and intimidation to dominate. For him, these acts were about power and degradation, a twisted echo of his own abuse. The ship docked in Angola, where Panzram's crimes escalated. He lured 6 local men on a fake hunting trip, killed them for their boat, and became a self-styled pirate on African rivers. His violence was now proactive, meticulously planned. He had become a law unto himself, untethered from morality. The SS James G. Blaine was not just a ship. It was a vessel for his evil across the globe. Panzram was now a predator without borders. Stranded in Angola, Panzram reinvented himself as a crocodile hunter for a Portuguese trading company. The lawless jungles gave him near total freedom to continue his crimes. He claimed to have murdered a young guide and capsized a canoe, feeding his crew to crocodiles. Whether true or not, it reveals the depths of his depravity. Using his job as cover, he robbed, assaulted, and killed with impunity, exploiting trust at every turn. His racism and misanthropy fueled his violence. He saw people as obstacles or tools. Eventually, his luck ran out. He fled to Lisbon, but the darkness within him only deepened. In Africa, the last vestiges of his humanity were extinguished. Returning to the U.S. in 1928, Panzram resumed his spree, burglaries up and down the East Coast. In Washington, D.C., his crimes became even more calculated and terrifying. He broke into homes, assaulting and sodomizing young men and boys, not for passion, but to terrorize and humiliate. He was repaying the world for his own abuse, perpetuating the cycle of violence. For a time, he was a phantom, haunting the capital's quiet streets. But on August 24, 1928, he was caught during a burglary, armed and carrying stolen goods. This time, there was no escape. He was convicted and sent to Leavenworth. The journey of Carl Panzram, the vagabond killer, was nearing its end. But his story was not finished. At Leavenworth, Panzram met guard Henry Lesser, who showed him rare kindness. Moved, Panzram agreed to write his life story. 40,000 words of unfiltered confession. The Panzram Papers are a chilling window into a mind consumed by hatred and violence. He blamed society for making him what he was. I am what I am because of the way I was treated. Lesser smuggled the manuscript out, believing it a vital, if terrifying, cautionary tale. The papers force us to confront the role of abuse and neglect in creating monsters. Panzram's words offer no excuses but provide horrifying context. His voice remains a disturbing testament to a life lived in total opposition to humanity. At Leavenworth, Panzram murdered a laundry foreman and was sentenced to death. He welcomed execution, rejecting all appeals and threats of clemency. He refused redemption, meeting his fate with the same contempt he'd shown the world. On September 5, 1930, he was led to the gallows. Impatient, he spat his infamous last words, "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard! I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around." With that, the life of one of America's most hateful criminals ended at 39. His story is more than a litany of crimes. It's a case study in the cycle of violence. It forces us to question our institutions and our responsibility to the abused and forgotten. Monsters are not born, they are made. Only by understanding the darkness can we hope to bring more light into the world.